Hello, I am Alexey Nikolsky, composer and musicologist with a doctorate degree from the Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory. Today I am going to talk about dynamics in music. People usually think that dynamic expressions are self-evident and obvious to any listener, that loud sounds always express something strong and soft sounds something weak, and that anything in between expresses something moderate. However, at a closer look, we'll see that this view is an oversimplification, as it discards important semantic information. In reality, dynamics in music, like pitch and rhythm, conveys information through signs. Any transmission of information requires signs. And any sign has a dual nature. It consists of 1. A perceptible physical body that acts as a signifier, which stands for something, and 2. That something which it signifies, the signified, which is the meaning of that physical body. The relationship between the signifier and the signified has to be learned in order to understand any sign. Take a road sign, for instance, a stop sign that shows an image of a palm. Someone driving a car has to know that this image means to make a full stop. If a person is unfamiliar with this convention, they won't know that this is what they are supposed to do. Musical dynamics works very much like a road sign, except that its physical body is auditory rather than visual. Its signifier is the amplitude of sound, and its signified is the character of the music. Each community of music users recognizes some common gradations of amplitude as suitable or unsuitable for certain expressions. These gradations can be abrupt or gradual, and brief or sustained over a period of time. All such dynamic changes are usually rather important in guiding the expression of a given musical composition. However, amplitude in itself does not act as any particular character. The same amplitude can express different characters, and in order to figure out which character it conveys, we have to know the conventions for it. The words loud and soft per se refer only to the signifier, the amplitude. Technically speaking, loud is one's subjective impression of a high amplitude sound, whereas soft is one's impression of a low amplitude sound. What is often misleading is that the word soft implies a quiet and gentle character. But low intensity sounds are not always gentle and kind. For instance, a snake's hissing, although quiet, is in fact angry and dangerous. In music, low amplitude sound can also express fear. To tell which kind of soft music expresses fear and which kind expresses tenderness, we have to know the conventions of that music culture. Conversely, loud music is not necessarily tense and strained, as in the expression of anger. Loud sound can also convey joy, which sounds more relaxed and free-flowing. What is important here is that the connection between the extent of intensity and a particular character is set by public convention. People have to agree on which kind of loudness is appropriate for the expression of anger and which kind for the expression of joy. To illustrate the variability in loud and soft expressions, let's compare the characters of 8 preludes by Chopin, as performed by Rudolf Kerrer, where 4 of the 8 are soft and the other 4 are loud, while each has its own character. As you can see here, the same amplitude can express different characters, and in order to figure out which character it conveys, we have to know the conventions for it. Different musical cultures might employ different conventions of loudness and softness, determined by different environments. For instance, the wide open space of the mountain terrain favors loud piercing sound that can travel over long distances. Accordingly, the thrilling sound of bagpipes epitomizes Scottish traditional music. However, in Scotland, a bagpipe can also convey tenderness, as in the expression of nostalgia or in a romantic serenade. Such expressions appear normal to Scots, but can disturb the non-Scottish listeners. However, even for Scots, a bagpipe serenade is relatively quieter than a bagpipe parade music, which expresses a powerful and mighty character. In polar opposite, the music performed in the Inuit yurts or in places of living of other indigenous northern ethnicities is generally low in intensity, since it is designed for personal use at a very close distance. Singing or playing loud music in the freezing windy conditions of the extreme north is simply painful. Therefore, in the Inuit musical culture, even the display of dominance, such as in a male boasting song, can have a relatively soft sound, yet not as soft as, say, a lullaby.
Karvutom, karvutom, tateo monso, nikai helao yato, ni yato, taniko vinino, manong kam hawamo, tananya nonta, tatibalta.
As you can see here, the Inuit loud can actually sound softer than the Scottish soft. This difference reflects the relativity of dynamics between different music cultures. Each culture establishes its own absolute dynamic values for its most common types of music. Music genres such as dance, march, or lullaby forge public conventions through the practice of music communication. And it is these conventions that connect the characteristic patterns of music with certain dynamic levels. Bagpipe serenading has to be loud enough for a lady living on top of one mountain to be able to hear the serenade directed at her by an admirer piper playing on another mountain. In this way, the Scottish ear becomes accustomed to the loud expression of intimate feelings, and so overly soft serenading might appear as lacking in passion or determination. Here we arrive at a very important conclusion, which is, in order to compare music genres across different cultures, dynamic levels must be regarded as conventional musical signs that are defined through the practice of music communication. The more genres a music culture has, the more dynamic gradations it observes. Western classical music has accumulated perhaps the largest stock of genres and dynamic gradations. Western notation distinguishes between 8 levels of intensity. pianissimo, pianissimo, piano, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo, and fortissimo. Although the margins between these levels are not clear-cut, each is characterized by its suitability or unsuitability for certain expressions. For instance, pianissimo would be unsuitable for the expression of love because of its near-silent tranquility, but it suits the expression of fear. Or mezzo forte would be unsuitable for the expression of aggression because of its moderate intensity, while it perfectly suits the expression of love. The importance of these dynamic distinctions is such that creators of music have to adjust their natural physical capacities to the conventional musical expressions. Obviously, a young man has greater strength than an older woman, so his singing of a lullaby has to be significantly softened to match the conventions for lullabies. But in cultures where this convention is absent, as in some African music cultures, the lulling of a baby can be loud in order to detract the baby from crying. Well, I hope that now you can see why it is important to consider conventions and music genres when interpreting dynamics, and to distinguish between the absolute dynamic values required by a music work and the relative dynamic gradations of specific performers. I hope that you found this little coverage of dynamics helpful, and see you next time.